Hello, and welcome back to English for You. I'm Seb.
And I'm Mike.
See, I remembered you this time. Honestly,
Good.
I wasn't getting you to introduce yourself because I forgot your name. This time,
Really?
yeah,
Really?
no, I think maybe it's because we talked so much about face blindness in day one that I'm a little bit better at remembering faces now.
Yeah, yesterday we were learning about face blindness, and some people have a real problem remembering faces. In severe cases, they might not even recognize their own family or even their own face if they look in a mirror. Now, that is a very severe or serious case of face blindness. But for people who suffer from it in any way, it can be embarrassing, it can be upsetting, it can lead to social anxiety. So they have these different methods of sort of strategies or tricks or way of remembering faces, or at least the people whose faces they don't remember. They might remember their voice or their hairstyle or the clothes that they wear or just interesting details about those people.
Right, so we learned a lot of different strategies and ways that they can remember people, even if they're not good at recognizing their faces. But there's other people who are really good at remembering faces, and they're called super recognizers. We're going to be talking about them in today's article.
Reading.
What's in a face? Everything or nothing. People with face blindness struggle to recognize faces, while super recognizers are great at this. Around 1 to 2% of the population are believed to be super recognizers. They can recognize 80% of the faces they see. It's not hard to imagine when this gift could come in handy. Andy Pope, a police officer in Birmingham, UK, is great at identifying suspects. He has picked out over 2,000 in his career. Pope says he's able to remember faces for years and can even identify suspects wearing masks. Super recognizers are valuable to any police force and can help out in all kinds of criminal investigations. Super recognizers would also be super useful at airports and other border crossings. This is because they're also good at comparing images. When a passport machine is out of order, a super recognizer can do the job. From these two types of people, we can see there are ways to overcome difficult conditions. There are also ways to make use of your own gifts.
Okay, so our article for today, it talks about people who are the opposite of people who have face blindness. It says people with face blindness struggle to recognize faces. We learned about them yesterday. While super recognizers are great at this. So this is exactly, as I said, the opposite. If you're really great at something, you're really good at something. If you struggle with something, it's difficult for you. Yeah, to struggle,
Exactly.
it basically means something is not easy, it's difficult for you. You might make it, you might be successful, but it's not sort of like, hey, that was no problem. No, it's probably a big problem for you. So you might struggle with certain subjects at home. You might struggle with getting up early in the morning when you have to go to school on a Monday. You might struggle with all sorts of things. If it brings trouble in your life and you find it not so easy, you might struggle with it or find it a struggle. We can also use it as a noun to talk about difficult things. For example, as a schoolboy, Larry really struggled with math. Yeah, me too, Larry.
Yeah, so basically when we're saying that he found math really hard. He probably got really bad grades, or he had to take extra classes to improve his understanding of math. So basically, struggling is always something that we don't find easy. Okay, so let's move on to our grammar point. So we talked about people with face blindness struggling to recognize faces, while super recognizers are great at recognizing faces. So we've got this word while here, and we use this when we're making comparisons. We can use while or whereas, that's one word, whereas, when we have two subjects that we want to compare. So here's an easy example sentence. John, that's our first subject, likes to drink tea, whereas Susan, that's our second subject, prefers coffee. Okay, let's move on to our next sentence of the article. Around 1 to 2% of the population are believed to be super recognizers. What was that word population that we saw there, Mike?
Population is really just the number of people in a certain area. When we use population, we are usually talking about people. You could talk about the population of other things, but we would probably put a noun in front of it. The bird population, the number of birds in a certain area. But when we talk about population, we usually just mean people in an area, in a city, in a county, in a country, in a certain region, or something like that. So 1 to 2% of the human population, 1 to 2% of people, I guess this would be in the world, not just in Taiwan or Taipei, but in the whole world, are super recognizers. We could use population in another way. For example, the population of Taiwan is getting smaller every year. Yeah, it's true. The population of Taiwan, and I believe even Taipei is going down, is getting smaller. So, of course, since populations are numbers, they do change over time.
Exactly. So these people, these super recognizers, the article says, they can recognize 80% of the faces they see. It's not hard to imagine when this gift could come in handy. Now, come in handy is a phrase, and it basically means be useful, especially for a purpose. So for me, I am learning Chinese right now, but before I started learning Chinese, I was learning Japanese. And the writing in Chinese and Japanese is similar. So for me, being able to read Japanese characters came in handy when I started learning Chinese. It meant that the characters were easier to read than if I had learned no other foreign languages before I started learning it. Another example sentence we could use is Emma's people skills will come in handy at her new sales job.
But how about this example of a super recognizer and how it comes in handy? It says, Andy Pope, a police officer in Birmingham, UK, is great at identifying suspects. Of course, a police officer just has to see a photograph of a suspect, a criminal, a bad guy that the police are looking for, and he can point him out in a crowd of people. That would be a very useful skill. To identify something is to be able to look at it and know what it is, or look at a person and know who that person is. You can identify the things in your home. You can identify your classmates, your family, your friends. If it's a stranger you've never met before, you wouldn't be able to identify that person because you know nothing about them. But if it's familiar to you, you can probably identify it, even if you just saw a picture, in this case, a picture of a suspect. A suspect is someone who the police are looking for, or the police think might have done a crime. They're not sure. They might not have all the evidence, all the proof that they're looking for, but they're certainly interested in talking to that person and saying, hey, where were you on this day? Because we know there was a crime. You look like the guy. And so we want to ask you some more questions. We suspect, we could also use it as a verb, we think you might be the bad guy we're looking for. So the suspect is someone the police think might be involved in a crime. For example, the police have arrested 4 suspects in connection with the bank robbery. They look like the same people who were in that bank stealing money.
Exactly. So I am sure that Andy Pope would have been very helpful in that investigation. The article says he has picked out over 2,000, that's 2,000 people, in his career. Wow, okay, so he's very good at picking out people. He's very good at identifying them, the word that we just learned. Pick out basically means identify. So he talks a little bit about his ability to remember faces, doesn't he?
That's right. Pope says he's able to remember faces for years and can even identify suspects wearing masks. Well, yeah,
Now that's a skill.
Police often do find suspects or solve crimes in a matter of days, but sometimes they can't find that person. And even if it happened years ago, if Andy saw a picture of that person, he can pick them out even years later, and even if they're wearing a mask. So even in COVID, you're not safe from Andy Pope, super recognizer police constable in Birmingham, UK, because even the shape of your eyes or the shape of your hair, your forehead, he can even identify or pick out people when most of their faces are covered. This is something we could never really train a computer to do as efficiently as Andy Pope can do it. So yeah, I think super recognizer is definitely a good title for someone with this kind of skill.
Yes, exactly. In fact, the article says super recognizers are valuable to any police force and can help out in all kinds of criminal investigations. Is very similar to help on its own. But normally when we talk about helping someone, we're talking about helping them do a specific thing. When we say help out, we just mean generally offering a service or assisting someone in a place of work or a certain environment. So he's helping them identify criminals, isn't he?
Absolutely. And a criminal would be kind of like a suspect, but maybe a suspect who they now know was involved in the crime. You could just look like the bad guy, in which case you might be a suspect, but then after they ask you questions, they decide, yeah, it wasn't you. But if it was you, if you did do the crime, especially if the police catch you and you go to court and they prove that you were there stealing the money, then you would be a criminal. So a criminal is basically someone who has done a crime. And then we can use it as an adjective to talk about anything to do with crime. A criminal investigation is different from a scientific investigation. Criminal science, or CSI, is when they're looking for fingerprints or DNA or something like that. Police officers who go out to try to find the bad guys, those are criminal investigators or something like that. So anything to do with crime, catching people, the police, investigating terrible things that have happened, we could use this adjective criminal in lots of different ways. For example, the government is working hard to crack down on criminal activity in their neighborhood. All right. So if it's legal activity, if it's business activity, as long as no one's breaking a law, that's okay. But if it's criminal, laws are being broken. So you're going to need some investigations to go on.
Exactly. And investigation is one of the other words we need to look at here. When we talk about an investigation, we're talking about the process of examining a crime or a problem or any other kind of issue. The article continues, super recognizers would also be super useful at airports and other border crossings. I imagine they certainly would be, because that's when you need to be sure who people are who they say they are, especially when they're coming in through a border crossing. And a border crossing is basically a point where you enter a country. So border, you might already know, is 国境. So the line that goes around a country and defines its limits. When you enter a country, you cross that line. That could be on the edge of the country, or it could be at the airport. These are all border crossings. So super recognizers are obviously very helpful in those situations because they can tell if you are who you say you are on your passport.
Exactly, working at airports and places like that, because these border crossings, it says this is because they're also good at comparing images, right? So one of the things they do at a border crossing is you often have to show them your passport. They look at the picture and then they look at you, then they look, they're comparing the image to the face in front of them. Well, the super recognizer would be good at that, and they wouldn't need cameras or computers to help. They would be very good at just using their mind to compare these images. An image is basically a picture of some kind. Generally, we would think of photographs, things you take with cameras, but a painting, a drawing, something like that, something you look at and you can see what it is. We're not using words to tell you, We're just using some kind of drawing or photograph or image like that. For example, the artist used lasers and other lights to draw images on the clouds. Interesting. So it wasn't just nice colors. They were actually drawing birds and angels and things like that, things you can see, recognize, and whatnot. So of course, yes, super recognizers are super good at comparing images. It says when a passport machine is out of order, a super recognizer can do the job. Absolutely. You don't need the computers or the passport machine. You just need their amazing ability to recognize people. What's a passport? We mentioned this earlier.
Right. A passport is a very important document you're going to need at the airport. You're going to be needing when you're coming into a country. It's a travel document that proves who you are. Let's look at an example sentence for passport. Deborah has 2 passports, one from the UK and one from Chile. Okay, so it sounds like Deborah has 2 nationalities. She is both Chilean and British, and so she has 2 passports. Don't you have 2 passports, Mike?
No, just one.
Ah, I thought that you were both Canadian and British.
No, I just
Okay.
lived there. But both of my parents are from Canada. I guess Deborah, her mother might be from the UK, and maybe her father's from Chile. That's why she's lucky that way. But anyways, if a machine, even a passport machine or any machine, is out of order, this phrase just means it doesn't work. It could be broken, it could be complete junk and you need to buy a new one, or maybe you just need to change something, fix something, or change the battery to make it work again. But right now, sorry, it doesn't work. It's out of order. All right, so let's get back to our article. As we wrap up, it says, from these 2 types of people, we can see there are ways to overcome difficult conditions. Absolutely. So super recognizers or people with face blindness, either way, there are ways to overcome difficult conditions. If you overcome something, you face trouble in your life, you face a challenge or a difficulty, but you don't quit, you don't give up, you don't say, I can't. No, you work at it, you work hard, and then you do beat that. You climb over it or go over it or come over it. You pass that challenge, you pass that difficulty, and you go on to success. For example, we could say Hannah overcame her fear of flying and went to Hawaii this week. Oh, bravo. Good for her.
That would definitely be overcoming that problem. The article concludes by saying there are also ways to make use of your own gifts. Okay, so suggesting that we all have things that we're really good at and really not so good at. And we can find ways to overcome those problems, or we can find what we're really good at and find a way to, apply that in our life, maybe get a certain job, maybe just get ahead in a certain way. All right, I think that's all the time we have for today's episode. So we will wind up now and go through to our For You chat.
You chat.
Okay, so our For You chat question for today, we actually kind of touched on just now. It is, what gifts do you have? How do you make use of them? Okay, so I talked about one of my gifts. What gifts do you have, Mike?
Well, I'm not a super recognizer, but I've always had a very good ear for music. So I'm the type of person who I can listen to a song one time and generally remember it quite well. As you know, I play music. So if I have to learn a new song, it's quite easy for me just to sit down with my guitar, listen to it 2 or 3 times and just sort of pick it out and find the right notes. So I don't find that very difficult. I don't usually have to read the music or have someone show it to me. I can often just use my ear and my hands to pick out things. And since I play music in different groups, learning songs has always been something I find quite easy and fun, whereas other people might be a little frustrated by it.
Right. And I think that something that's good to remember is that for a lot of us, your gifts are actually things that you can build on. So if you're interested in something and you don't feel like you have a gift at it, you can just keep practicing, keep trying, and you will, I imagine, like you did with the guitar, you will eventually just find that you're very gifted at it, very gifted at what you do. Okay, so I think that's all that we have time for our For You chat. You guys can discuss that question, and we will see you again for more fantastic articles. For English for You, I'm Seb.
I'm Mike.
And we'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Vocabulary Review.
Struggle. The teacher explained the problem many times, but Jack still struggled to understand it. Population. The city of Taipei has a population of about 2.6 million people. Suspect. The robbery happened last night, and the police already have a suspect. Criminal. Recently, this area has become known for drug dealing and other criminal activities. Image. I just bought a new camera. It can produce clearer images than my old one. Passport. When traveling to another country, you'll need to show your passport at the border.
智慧小补帖
Identify. Investigation. Border crossing. Overcome.
以上节目是由活用空中美语制作，活用空中美语杂志，请洽询全国各大书店。如欲索取试听教材，请来电02-2364-4000 02-2364-4000，或上网查询，网址是 www.english4u.net www.english4u.net